Can I start by welcoming everyone to our Teacher Wellbeing Matters seminar here at the Scottish Learning Festival. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to stage this seminar and to have all of you with us this afternoon. We hope you've enjoyed the festival so far and that you've had plenty of opportunity to engage in the many learning experiences that have been on offer that hopefully you'll be able to take back to the classroom. This session, though, that the EIS is offering is more directly targeted at trying to improve outcomes for you, and as a byproduct for your learners, but first and foremost about improving wellbeing outcomes for you. It's about trying to provide you with as many possibilities as we can about how you might look after yourselves at work amidst very busy work and home lives. And of course, against the continuing COVID backdrop. And speaking of backdrops, we hope that the graphic that Pauline and I have behind us, very much kind of reflects the busyness of a teacher's life at the moment, and certainly, as it has been over the last 18 months. So within the session, we want you to be really clear that looking after yourself isn't selfish. It's a necessity and it's an entitlement for you as people and as teachers. And it also benefits those around you, including the young people that you work with, back in your classrooms or in your ELC settings or whatever education context you happen to be working in. But a key message that we want to share with you this afternoon is that self-care isn't selfish. Co-presenting with me today is my colleague Pauline McColgan, who you'll be introduced to quite shortly. She's one of our professional learning coordinators, and she's going to be doing some of the activities and tech bits with you that I'm much less adept at than she is. In the meantime, though, can I remind everyone that the session is being recorded, and with that in mind, you're perfectly welcome to have your camera off or on, whichever is more comfortable for you. And as is usual protocol for online events like this, can you please ensure that your mics are on mute? You'll be very welcome, of course, to contribute thoughts and ideas within the chat section of the platform. And Pauline's going to set up a couple of activities for us a little bit later on that will be directly inviting your participation. I should also say that all of the resources and the materials that will be mentioned, that we'll mention, will be made available to you at some point, either as we're talking or certainly by the end of the session. In particular, Pauline's going to be sharing with you at the end our wellbeing toolkit. So if you could stay with us till then, that would be great. One of the first things that we want to do is a little poll. We want to try and gauge what your interest is in wellbeing and what it was that brought you to this session this afternoon. So to help us with that, Pauline is going to put a Menti Meter link into the chat. So this is just some of you might have seen this kind of function before. It's just a very kind of quick online digital poll. So if you could click on the link that Pauline's provided and go to the page that it takes you to, you'll see that there are a list of possible reasons as to why you might have chosen to sign up for this seminar this afternoon. And we would invite you to click any number of those options that you think accurately describes, your reasoning for coming to the Our Wellbeing Matters session this afternoon. You've got a few options there. There's a few favourites beginning to appear. It's really interesting. So do we think that everyone's been able to do this yet, Pauline, or another few seconds? Yeah. Okay, that might be us then now, Pauline, if we could go to see the results of that overall.
So this is you can see it in live time. So these are the results as they come in.
That's great, Pauline, thanks. Okay, so that is really interesting. So we've got quite a split across three main areas, perhaps. Interestingly, the vast majority of responses are about supporting others, which is going to be really, I think, relevant to what to what we're hoping to share with you in the course of the seminar. A significant number, around, well, 88 people seeking a healthier work-life balance, seeking to make a positive change. We've got workload featuring there as well, unsurprisingly, and maybe glad to say that the numbers of people who are saying that they're actually struggling with wellbeing at this point in time are fewer than we might have anticipated, given the level of challenge that you've faced over the last 18 months and even since the new academic session has begun. But I think that your answers to that poll very much reflect the substance of what we wanted to share with you this afternoon. So that's interesting, that we seem to be aligned in terms of our purpose already. So thanks very much for that, and thanks, Pauline, for organising that for us. So can I ask you to move to the first of the slides that we've got for people on my section this afternoon? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about well-being, not so much as a pursuit for individuals, but as something that the EIS sees very much as being a collective endeavour. And there are a number of areas that are around you as teachers, and as employees, that are there as the foundation of many aspects of your wellbeing. And I'm just going to talk through, in broad terms, what each of these are, so that you begin to get a picture of, how as an individual your wellbeing is being protected by certain policy, procedure, legislation, and frameworks, and indeed your contract. These things already been in place, but also how the union or our union can assist you in going after more positive wellbeing outcomes for yourself and indeed for your colleagues, as many of you have expressed an interest in doing. So there can be a temptation to consider wellbeing as a matter of individual responsibility, something that's in the hands of individuals alone. And while this might be true to a greater or a lesser extent when we're not at work, when it comes to workplace wellbeing, it's very much about a collective approach. And indeed, a lot of responsibility for our wellbeing rests with our employers, whoever they happen to be. This makes clearer sense when we think about wellbeing as health and wellbeing, and makes even more sense when we think of it as health and safety and wellbeing. And of course, health also means mental health as well. So employers have responsibilities with regards to this, responsibilities that are framed in legal and contractual or policy terms, as outlined here in this first slide. And as I said, I'm going to talk about each of these very briefly so that we get a sense of the context within which we're working. And as I said, importantly, the EIS encourages a collective approach to wellbeing. We don't see it that teachers should be flying solo in trying to navigate workplace wellbeing. We and other unions are here as co-pilots, and these are the levers that we can use to protect and promote teacher wellbeing alongside the kinds of self-care activities that Pauline will talk about later. So we were really keen that you didn't have a sense from the EIS presentation this afternoon that it's all down to you. We wanted it to be very, very clear that there are certain parameters and processes and policy and legislation and all of that are in operation within the workplace that are also there very much to protect your wellbeing. So you're absolutely not having to fly solo. Can you change slides, please, Pauline? So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was health and safety legislation. All employees are covered by this. And you'll be aware of this because you'll have health and safety reps at work. Whatever your workplace is, you'll have health and safety reps at work, or you'll have reps who talk about health and safety legislation and what's already in place to protect you. But for the purposes of this afternoon, it's important to point out that this legislation has evolved over the years to include mental health as well as physical health protections, and that's the piece, I suppose, that relates much more closely to that broader sense of well-being beyond just sort of like physical safety. So employers have a legal duty to protect employees from stress at work by carrying out risk assessments and acting on them. And those stress risk assessments cover each of those 6 areas that are outlined there within the slide. So the demands that are upon employees, how much control they have over their work and the pace of their work and so on, what support networks are in place to enable people to do their jobs to the best of their ability, what the climate is like in terms of relationships and so on, and the extent to which people understand understand their roles and the extent to which people are supported to, to manage processes of change. So there's quite a sort of like careful construction, if you like, around risk assessments. These are advised by the Health and Safety Executive, and for anyone looking for additional information about those, there's a link, or not a link, a web address at the bottom of the slide, and we'll share all the slides with you after the session. Can we move on to the next one, please, Pauline? Also, in terms of legislation, there's the Equality Act, which came into force in 2010. It might come as a surprise to some, but the Equality Act covers everyone in the United Kingdom because we all have protected characteristics. The extent to which these apply vary from context to context, but we all share protected characteristics, so we're all covered by this legislation. And the fundamental aim of this legislation is to protect people from discrimination, harassment and victimisation, which, it's a no-brainer that these would be things that would be real eroders of people's well-being at work. And certainly within the EIS, we look to aspects of equality legislation and the associated public sector equality duty when we're looking at cases of discrimination and so on. And in large part, when we're making those cases, we make a link with people's well-being and the impact of discrimination, etc., on their mental health. So it's important that people understand the extent of the protections that they have in terms of the Equality Act. And also the fact that employers, and certainly local authority employers, are bound by the terms of that legislation. Okay, next slide, please, Pauline. Moving away from legal protections, the Scottish Government has worked with trade unions and employers in recent years to develop the Fair Work framework. And this is something that employers sign up to rather than being legally compelled to abide by. But it is important to say that all public bodies in Scotland, so that's local authorities who are largely our employers, are encouraged to work with trade unions to adopt the terms of the framework, which, as you can see, encompass areas that are critical underpinnings of well-being at work. So effective voice, having a say, opportunities, that, access to opportunities on an equal footing, to all other employees, having job security, having a sense of fulfilment, a sense of satisfaction that your work has meaning and purpose, and finally that all are treated with dignity and free from bullying and harassment, with respect being the kind of all-encompassing principle around that. So again, this is something that the EIS would refer to, perhaps, when we're talking about well-being and the entitlements of our members to good well-being at work, and we would see all of these aspects of the Fair Work framework as being contributing factors to the extent to which people will experience good well-being at work or not. Thanks, Pauline. The next one, please. Moving on to contractual matters, in terms of contracts, the main elements that can help you and the union to look after your well-being at work, the main element rather is the working time agreement. So that's the collective agreement that's reached at school level between the union or unions, if you have more than one representative in your school, and the head teacher. And the working time agreement, you'll know, is usually signed off over the summer term, with a view to coming into operation in the new academic session. So there can be a wee bit of a risk that when we get into the thick of a new term and the buzz and the rhythm and the buzz of it all, you can kind of forget what the terms of the working time agreement were that were agreed a way back maybe in May or June before the summer holidays. But it really is important that we keep an eye on the working time agreement, because it's a key means by which we can control workload and therefore do things that are, that are supportive of our well-being rather than eroding of our well-being. So we really should try not to let, to let I suppose the effort around all of that slip. It's kind of like, it reminds me actually of like when drivers are driving, and when they're driving any kind of route, they keep an eye on the speed limit and they keep an eye on their speedometer to help keep themselves and others safe, to make sure that they're not going too fast, in any given situation, such that it would put either their life or the lives of others at risk, or pose other kind of danger. So excessive speed on the roads brings an obvious health and safety risk to well-being, a physical risk in terms of well-being, but excessive workload and excessive working hours also bring risks. At work, a different kind of risk. It's not the same immediate kind of physical threat as would be posed by a speeding driver, but nonetheless, to consistently work over and above the terms of our contracts does pose a risk to our well-being, and it's one that we would do well to pay attention to. So, we would say that the working time agreement acts a bit like the speed limiting tools that we use when we're driving. So the speed limit signs that are out on the roads and the speedometer that we have inside our vehicles. We should keep our eye on them. We should keep our eye on the working time agreement to keep ourselves and others safe. And well at work, to keep ourselves and others safe and well at work. It's teachers' contractual right to do this, and unions like us support teachers in ensuring that that right is upheld. There shouldn't be any hesitancy about going back to the working time agreement to see what it says about what we should be doing as collective activity in any 1 week, how much of that collective activity we should be doing in 1 week, of a particular kind, whether it be reporting, whether it be parents' nights, whether it be, some other big piece of development work that we're collaborating with colleagues around. And there should be no issue at all in bringing to the attention of our colleagues where we think that maybe additional asks or demands have crept in over and above, what has already been captured within the working time agreement. It's kind of like we have a responsibility to ourselves to do it, and we have a responsibility to our colleagues to do it. And as we kind of alluded to at the beginning, that actually has an impact on the experiences of the young people that we're teaching as well. We have to have a sustainable approach to how we're carrying out our work throughout the year, and the working time agreement is a main tool to try and help us to do that. Thanks, Pauline. If we can move on to slide 6, please, or the next one. And finally, in policy terms, we've had a more recent development in the onset of the empowerment agenda to help support wellbeing at work. So this is not so much directly as indirectly, because all of the elements of this actually, we would say, underpin an empowered school culture, which generally impacts positively on teacher wellbeing. So we would want to see collegiality, we would want to see collaboration, professional voice and agency, shared decision making, distributed leadership, teacher-led research and inquiry. And all of this links back to actually, what we talked about a few slides before in relation to the principles of the Fair Work framework. There's a lot of overlap between what was envisaged within the Fair Work framework and what's been captured in terms of, a healthy, positive, empowered school culture where you've got teacher voice and agency sitting comfortably alongside and on equal footing to participation by other, key actors within the school community. And it's that sense of shared endeavour and having a right to share ideas, a right to be involved in decision making, a right to share thinking. It's all of these things that we think have the potential, the real potential to lead to enhancements overall for teacher wellbeing. It's important to underline too that this agenda is shared by unions, so all of the unions that are signed up to this, the Scottish Government, local authorities, Education Scotland, all who've got a main interest in education in Scotland have been pushing forward with the agenda around school empowerment. To some extent, it's maybe been set out of kilter a little bit because of the the disruption of the pandemic. That said, the EIS has still been on message around, the importance of empowerment within that context. And in fact, a number of people actually have commented that they feel that things have moved on well and in a positive direction in terms of empowerment because of the way that everyone has had to collaborate and work together in the face of adversity. So we're hopeful that we can make further inroads and take further strides towards this, hopefully as we enter a period of recovery. So just to finish off on that, the research shows that where teacher wellbeing is strong, so too are pupil outcomes. So again, this kind of harks back to this idea about self-care and looking after yourself and prioritising your wellbeing, not being selfish, not being wholly selfish and self-interested. It is inextricably linked to pupil outcomes as well. So again, by prioritising your well-being, looking after yourself and working alongside the union to do that, you're also helping to look after colleagues and in turn ensure that the outcomes for our young people are as strong as they can possibly be. So yeah, final slide, Pauline. Thanks. So if we were having this session in person, which of course unfortunately we aren't, we would be giving you all badges, you know, maybe something that looked something like this. And we think that this kind of says what the EIS thinks about wellbeing. Wellbeing is something that we work together on in the interests of every teacher. It's a collective, it's a club. We might not have designed it exactly this way, but I thought this was quite a good way of summarising it. It's about employers and government having a significant role to play in laying the foundations for good health and safety and wellbeing at work, and on maintaining those foundations ongoingly. And it's about individual teachers playing their part in looking after themselves and their colleagues. And it's about the EIS and other unions working with members, employers and government to promote and protect teacher health and wellbeing for the benefit of all. Being part of a union that very much believes teacher wellbeing matters, you're taking healthy steps towards improving wellbeing at work for yourself and for your colleagues, so you're most definitely deserving of a badge, at least for that, and for being here this afternoon. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Pauline, who's going to talk a bit more about the Our Wellbeing Matters offer that the EIS has been making to its members over the course of the past 18 months or so. Thanks, Pauline.
Thanks, Anja. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So, can everyone hear me okay? Can I just check that first of all? Great. Okay, so building energy around about wellbeing is evident in the work of EIS. Wellbeing focused courses have developed from 2019 to the present, where participants have started by considering what's been useful in the classroom, and there has been a growing commitment towards the importance of self-care. The health and wellbeing resources hosted on the website contain resources that are useful for teachers in areas such as supporting mindful practices and crisis care. The Our Wellbeing Matters programme aims to create and sustain some good practices around how we think and feel about ourselves, our lives and our work. The extensive resource is based on a range of webinars that took place earlier this year, from creative writing to human rights to money matters, so gardening was in there, and some digital wellbeing. EIS members Claire Young and Joanne Thompson talk about engaging in the programme in this upcoming video.
Hi, I am Claire Young. I'm an English teacher and EIS member. I'm based in Edinburgh. I'm afraid my teaching timetable means that I haven't been able to join this session in person, and instead here I am in my garden, which is the easiest place to film, just to put together some thoughts on the difference that the EIS wellbeing professional learning has made to me over the past year or so. I'd start by saying that I am really thankful to see the increased importance and visibility being placed on high quality professional learning for teachers' wellbeing. It's an area of practice that I have been passionate about for most of my career. I'm now 12 years into teaching, and I have seen a real shift in the opportunities available to actually really embed this and take seriously the skills that we can build, the strengths that we can recognise, and the work that we can do collectively on what can sometimes be a very nebulous theme that is spoken about more than it is acted on. And I feel a sea change in that, and that is definitely for me a change for the better. I think one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about wellbeing is I realise how essential it has been to me sustaining a profession that I absolutely love. 12 years of education has brought a huge amount of joy and satisfaction to me, remarkable opportunities to learn from young people and colleagues within my school community, and times of real challenge as well, both from events faced in my school community and also from the life shocks that visit all of us. So having a profession which takes seriously our well-being as we work, especially because we're doing relationship-based work, especially because we are doing work that brings us into contact with families, young people, communities who are facing their own struggles and challenges with well-being, and we need to be grounded and equipped to respond to that. Having high quality professional learning, I think, makes all the difference, and it's recognised too in the new whole school approach framework that's just been published to support the well-being of children and young people in schools, and that is very clear that schools need embedded supports and structures, that staff well-being must be a core component of the work that is done to support young people's well-being. We know that for them to be well, we have to be well. We also know that for them to learn well, we have to be well. And that involves a real skill and knowledge around how we both support our own well-being and our colleagues' needs. And the EIS professional learning offer, I think, was the first time for me that I got really coherent, well-led input that made me see and realise what that could look like. I am also proud that our school community has worked hard for the past 4 years. We've had a very active staff wellbeing community and working group. We have surveyed staff at least annually to understand what their needs are. We have focused on open dialogue and serious action planning around challenges of workload, of workplace relationships and other workplace stressors, as well as looking at how we promote staff well-being in terms of forming and maintaining healthy habits, and the more personal individual work of what actually keeps us well through the different seasons of life and the different times that we travel through. So that work has been ongoing, but I'm aware that I have been doing it with a certain kind of looking over my shoulder, wondering about if other people are doing it differently, or if there's a better model, or if I'm on track, or how it sits in the bigger picture. And I haven't really found the networks and communities of other professionals around the country to see what they're doing and what it looks like in their places. And being part of the Reflecting, Leading on Wellbeing offer from EIS gave me that network. It gave me that opportunity to hear and understand what staff wellbeing looks like in other school communities, and it also offered a really strong reflective space to consider what is working well and what is emerging is important, that if I don't stop and reflect, I might miss in the wellbeing work that I was leading, and also just to consider meaningful and strength-based ways to move forward. So it was a course that was really empowering to be part of. It was also just a good and positive thing to connect with other people in education working on a similar theme, and it gave me an added coherence and clarity in the work that I was doing. So based on that, I had more confidence and was able to be more open in the way that I led our staff wellbeing work, and it led to the final term of our staff wellbeing work at my school being one where we had a really diverse programme. We offered a range of different activities and approaches to suit different needs, and I think my confidence in having that kind of openness and really empowering others to lead was partly due to that experience within the reflective group. I have also benefited from the Our Wellbeing Matters programme and its individual sessions exploring things like nature connection, the power of art and doodling, the importance of journaling, and building those individual habits, being able to attend sessions that resonate with you. They've helped me to reconnect with well-being habits that I've maybe kind of lost track of in the busy day. They've helped me to reconnect with and discover new things, and they've added kind of little pockets of calm and things that I can add through my working day and through my weekends that actually help to sustain me and help me to arrive in a place where I can take in the good from the work that I'm doing, and also I can arrive in a kind of more grounded and calm spot because I am in a better connection with myself. So both in the work that has been done to support the structural whole school level wellbeing work led by staff, and also in the work being done to support individuals in building the right framework and the right practices and the right habits for what wellbeing looks like. I think the EIS has come up with a really strong model, and it's one that I think will be more and more necessary for us in the teaching profession as we continue to be in a profession which the nation holds huge ambitions for, quite rightly. But for us to be able to deliver transformational learning experiences, our wellbeing has to be kept at the centre of what we do. Thank you. Go well.
Hi, it's Joanne Thompson here from Scottish Borders, and I'm the Health and Wellbeing Support Officer for Schools on secondment at the moment. I think last year was really challenging for a lot of staff. Online teaching caused many to struggle. I think this unknown, the staff were overwhelmed, and people were scared to express how unknown it was to be doing teaching online and learning online. I think the ICT was pretty good for us in Scottish Borders because all the pupils had iPads and the teachers had iPads rollout. We had a thing called Inspire Learning, and we had teachers in the school that were trained to support teachers like myself who perhaps were less skilled than others. And thanks to them, I'm now an Apple teacher. I think wellbeing took on a new meaning for everybody. There was a lot of stress. There was working parents at home using multiple or sharing devices with their young people who were also pupils. There was people suffering from ill health and were in hospital. And I think for myself as a single person, there was a blurred line between home and work balance. Because my house isn't big, and it became my office pretty much full on. There was also my principal teacher sadly passed away in April with COVID, and that really had a big hit in our school, in our department, in terms of looking after ourselves and looking after our wellbeing. As a consequence of that, I had previously done and started again doing Qigong on Fridays, as soon as we were able to open up and do live sessions, because I find it very difficult to do anything online. Staff in school, we had set up a health and wellbeing committee, and Katie, my colleague, had started a bake-off challenge. We couldn't taste the food, but we could share photographs of what it might be. And we had staff quizzes and coffee mornings that staff set up as well, even as much as if we noticed that somebody was missing from one of the coffee mornings, we had one-to-one sessions catching up with them, just seeing if they were okay. In general terms, I think headquarters, when they rolled out Our Wellbeing Matters programme, it was very timely and very supportive for me. Myself, suffering from digital overload, when I seen the digital wellbeing course, I thought, is this going to enable me to burn my iPad? Because at that point I'd had enough. And what actually happened was, when I went along to that course, which was run in conjunction with Morey House in the Computing Studies Department, it allowed me to take control of social media in my personal time, and it allowed me to build in time checks and alarms, which were both surprising and refreshing. I found hours that I didn't think that I had before, and I finally, after 2 years, managed to wallpaper my hall, which was surprising. But I have to say that the best course that I did in the Wellbeing Matters was the EIS self-care as a sort of self-defence course. This radically educated me as to the boundaries that I was setting for activities to protect my time and energy. I think understanding that capitalism undervalues the care and emotional work which we do as teachers, like NHS staff, like social care workers, and that burnout comes from intensive productivity and institutionalised inequality with this systemic silencing where overwork is normalised, really gave me a wake-up call. And ultimately for me, my reflection on it all was that staff need self-care. They need self-advocacy skills for themselves to say, I can't continue to keep doing extra, can't do more. And they need self-empowerment as well as mental health support going forward. And in my new role with my colleague from primary and with the QIO, we're hoping to do that, to look at a good health and wellbeing course in Scottish Borders, not just to support young people in front of us, but also to support staff and put their wellbeing at the forefront.
That's great. So thanks very much to Claire and to Joanne, and Joanne's here today, so hello Joanne. It's worth repeating a couple of the messages that we heard in those videos. The importance of teacher wellbeing to the sustainability of the profession. The wellbeing practices are different for each of us. and wellbeing is not confined to the workplace, and neither is it confined to the home, and the benefits of one naturally link with the other. We want to ensure what we offer remains as relevant to our members and wider. So we have a very exciting programme coming up over the next few months that is themed per month. So creative writing this month, next month will be digital wellbeing, November we'll look at mental health, December we'll look at music and creativity, and we'll consider equalities round about health and wellbeing in January. So I'm just about to post a link to a Padlet that will give you the opportunity to have a little sample of the resources that are available through the EIS work. And this can open up into your browser apart from Teams. And if you want to, please take even a minute or two to have a little browse and consider what sparks your interest. And if you'd like to share with us the chat here, anything that you might like. It could be, as Joanne says, something about baking. It could be, as Claire says, something about doodling. Any ideas at all, please have a little nosy. And if you can come back, please, and we'll share the link for where you can find all of this information we've covered in the last 45 minutes. Thank you.
Hopefully that's worked okay for everyone, Pauline. Oh, there's a comment from Joanne. She's finding it hard to open. I hope other people have been able to open it. Oh, there we are. One from Murray.
Joanne, I think that's a good comment that from the digital wellbeing course, you'll know yourself working across different laptops and PCs and tablets can take its toll, and they'll work differently. So all of this will be on the EIS website as well. So please don't feel that you've missed out if you don't get a chance to participate in the next couple of minutes.
That's good. It looks like people are coasting now, Pauline. So with that then, Pauline, I wonder, are we just about ready to begin to bring things to a close? Hopefully people there will have had a flavour of the kinds of things that are going to be on offer. In addition to that, Pauline will supply a link to some of the resources that we've gathered over the last 18 months. There's a lot that, that we ran quite early on in the pandemic, and a lot of that material stays on the website. So even if what's coming up in the next few months doesn't particularly float your boat, please make sure to go through what's there amongst the archived material, and hopefully, because of the expansiveness of it, you'll find that there's something there that you're particularly interested in. And we regularly update the website. We update the professional learning section of the website regularly, and particularly this section on health and well-being, because it really is quite a priority for us at the moment. So make sure to dot onto the website back and forward, because I think over the course of, say, a term, or certainly a few months anyway, you'll find updates, because every time we run a professional learning event, then new material goes onto the website after it. So be sure to keep checking back. As we said at the beginning, everything that we've provided in terms of links, etc., Pauline is going to make available on the website. She's also provided a link in the chat. So I'm saying the website for this will be for people who are accessing this as a recording, but for those of you who are here just now, she's put the link in the chat. And even if you were unable to copy and paste that link, if you just Google EIS, PL blog, SLF, you'll be sure to find everything that we've shared with you today, including the slides that that I was working with at the beginning. So I think that all that leaves is for me to say to you all, thank you very much for coming along this afternoon. I hope that you enjoy the remainder of the Learning Festival. I hope that you've picked up a lot so far in terms of how you might support young people in the classroom across a range of priorities, but particularly from this session, how you might, if you haven't been doing this already, begin to give just a little bit more emphasis to prioritising your own well-being in your interests, in the interests of your colleagues, and in the interests of the children and young people that you are working with. So I think that's all from us this afternoon. Thank you very much, and hope to see you all again in person very soon.